I loathe that term. That's probably one of the most destructive pieces of advice you can give if you have afro hair, if you're trying to grow out your natural hair, if you're trying to improve the health of your hair. The problem is its term alone insinuates that it's healthy by saying it's protective. But in reality, the application of a protective style is doing the exact opposite. Now let's study this for a minute. Protective styling. What does that even mean? What are you protecting your hair from? The sun? Air? Heat? Cold? It's interesting. On one hand, we treat our hair as if it's this monster that has to be wrangled. And then you have something like this that's just the opposite and says that our hair is so delicate that we can't even have it exposed to normal environment, as if it's going to fall out if the wind blows on it or if the temperature is high. It's the worst thing you can do. And also it feeds into our very much implanted, ingrained thing about doing our hair and then don't do nothing else to it for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. Not one of us has ever had an improved condition of our hair by braiding it up, covering it up, weaving it up, wigging it up, not doing anything to it. If that was the case, none of us would be on here looking for how to improve the health of our hair. We'd all be good. We'd all have hair down to our ass, not afraid to cut it because it would be growing and thriving. But if you just substitute, one kind of not touching it, doing anything to it for another, it's still what it is. It's not taking care of your hair. And there's nothing healthy or protective about not taking care of your hair. You have to take care of it. There's just no way around it. The problem is it feels safe, especially if you're not comfortable with exactly how to take care of your hair, which is understandable. Now, inevitably, there will be somebody to post and say they do protective styling all the time and their hair is thriving and healthy. Well, if that's true, you're in a very, very, very small majority. For most of us, the worst thing you can do is deny your hair water. The worst thing you can do is to keep it clean and wash it on a regular basis. The worst thing you can do is put it away and not get rid of your shed hair and just let that build up. Because what's going to happen when you finally do take care of it and then you have all that shed hair that's just been trapped, and then now you're having a moment, and not a good moment, of trying to detangle your hair because it's knotting and tangling, and then your frustration level goes up, and then what happens? You cannot wait to get it back in that protective style, and it becomes a vicious cycle. Don't do it. Protective styling is not protecting anything. It's just a switch in the mental thinking, and just putting the notion of not doing anything to your hair into this cute little box. But it's a trap. Don't do it. Now let me say, out of everything else that's out there, I'll take it. Because at the very least, it will get you in the habit of getting your hair wet on a regular basis. I will take that over protective styling any day. However, here's the problem. If you don't ever wash your hair, and again, this whole water washing term is kind of like co-washing, neither of which is cleaning your hair. It's not doing anything to get rid of the dirt and oils, environmental whatever, your sebum, which is only good for a while, and then you're supposed to wash it out so you can produce some more. We need to stop putting these terms washing at the end of these things because it's confusing. So at the very least, with this water only method, find a gentle cleanser and wash your hair a couple times a month. And if the water only thing is working for you, hey, have at it. Chances are you're going to naturally gravitate to something that has moisturizing on the label. Those moisturizing shampoos are almost like lightweight conditioners, or kind of 2-in-1-ish, because it's leaving something behind even after you've washed it. That's how it's moisturizing, so to speak, because something has to be left behind to make your hair feel moisturized. But the problem with that, if your regimen is to add things to your hair even after shower, you're already behind the ball as far as even having space for your hair to be clean for a second, because you've already put something on your hair before you've left the shower, and then you condition on top of that, and then your leave-ins. So what happens by the time you get towards the end of your week or your next wash cycle, you may find that your hair is not drying within an hour or two, which is what it should be doing. And if you're going all day with a moist, wet hair because your hair won't dry, consider using a shampoo for oily hair, because essentially that's what your hair has become by the time it's time to wash it again. So you may actually get a better cleaning, than say using even a normal shampoo. Say versus a clarifying shampoo, which is a good fail-safe, because you're going to get everything out of your hair. At the very least, that step should be giving you a blank slate and putting nothing on your hair. Bubbles is not the indication. And we all know that from having to wash a greasy pan, and you have this, whatever dish liquid you're using, and you have to wash that pan over and over and over again, only to still feel that it still has a little bit of, a greasy feel to it. But yet you got bubbles all over the place, right? So we have to be sure we have a good balance of the things we're putting on our hair and how we're cleaning it. And something that's basically solid at room temperature in the jar is going to be waxy and solid on your hair. We have kind of trained to see things with shea butter and coconut oil in it and immediately assume that those things are what's going to be good for our hair. The problem is how we use those products. Now, if you put that in your hair and you do nothing else till it's time to wash your hair again, okay, maybe, but do not introduce water, because that's gonna be causing more problems than beneficial. Those products are meant to coat your hair, and introducing water or simply adding water after the fact, all that's going to do is prevent a barrier, number one, for water to get in. Or if you haven't been so successful getting a full coating, what's going to happen is those areas that aren't coated, where the water does get in, it's going to stay wet. It's not going to be able to evaporate because it's going to be trapped. Hence why oil and water doesn't mix. There's always going to be a separation. Either it's going to prevent water from getting in, or it's going to prevent the water from coming out. And what happens over time is your hair is going to become brittle and weak. Why? Because your hair is an organic thing. It's like a plant. Some plants that are not supposed to be sitting in water, the roots will rot. It's the same thing with your hair. If you leave your hair wet for too long and don't allow it to dry in a proper, span of time, it will literally dry rot on you. You know, it's really important when you use a product to use it as directed, at least initially. Find out if the directions are going to give you the results you want before you start deciding that you should do it another way. If the product says use on soaking wet hair, or if it says use on dry hair, there's a reason why that product says that. In order to get the benefit, don't just assume that your hair is going to be better with wet hair even though it says dry hair. You have to try it as instructed first. If you don't blame the product, and certainly don't blame your hair. It's you. When you change products or try to use a new product, always start with a blank slate, which means a clean head of hair. Because if you just simply put it on top of whatever else is on your hair, again, you can't blame the product or your hair. You just have too much stuff on it. You just have to be ready and willing to do things different, because you just have to. That's the only way to get past those humps. If you keep banging your head up against a brick wall, you're gonna bleed every time. So pick a softer option. Okay, bad analogy, but you get what I'm saying, right? I had a conversation with someone recently about, she was telling me about how, you know, she learned what to do with her hair, you know, from her aunt and her grandmother. And, you know, that brought up this whole idea that, you know, all this information that we come into once we become natural, and you start reaching out to those older than you, which is normal, and for their advice, because chances are they remember wearing their hair natural at some point in their lives. But the problem with that is our female ancestors and relatives were bringing along information back from the time when black people in general didn't have a whole lot of time and energy to dedicate to beautification, you know, and certainly didn't have the funds or even the array of products to know how to do our hair properly. I mean, we already lost language and culture, so we certainly lost whatever techniques and things we used to do with our hair. The only thing that seems to have kept and have been passed down is the whole, you know, braiding aspect. Back in the day, we were probably still using the grease on the stove that we actually cooked with, because where were we going? Beauty supply store? We had that and petroleum jelly, and that was it. I mean, we put the two and two together. My hair feels dry. I know that oils don't feel dry, so let me put these oils on my hair, braid it up real quick, or better yet, put something real hot on it and straighten it out with that petroleum on it or that grease on it, and going about my way, and then I'll deal with it again in the next 2 or 3, 4 weeks, right? And then you hit the 70s, and then it was, you know what, I mean, products were probably there then, but it was more suited for picking that afro out and you know, getting that volume, but it certainly wasn't about leaving your curl pattern. Again, I think everybody means well. It's just that if your intent is to get growth, to improve your health, and improve the look and definition of your hair, you have to stay in this century, in this decade, unfortunately. And you're going to have to weed through now with the plethora of folks trying to give information to find out what's right for you. So if you're doing it wrong, it's not a lost cause. You can always stop what you're doing, reassess the issues, change up your regimen, and do it right. Because only thing you have to gain is healthy hair. And for God's sake, stop with the protective styling. Please stop calling it that and stop promoting that. Now, if you want to do that, you want to put your hair in a weave, if you want to braid it up, then call it that. But you're not protecting anything. Nothing. Stop.